Pam, I have it on my end if you need me as backup.
Actually, I'm able to.
You got it.
I seem to be able to share a screen. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
All right, well, I seem to be able to oh my goodness. Choose. We'll see if I can share a window as opposed to. No, I cannot.
Okay, let me. I have it loaded. So let me put it. Give me 1 second.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, we're having a few technical difficulties with Teams. It seems to be a much more user-friendly platform. Yes, we can see it now.
Okay.
For those in the government, but it doesn't seem to be cooperating with us this morning. Thank you all for joining. We are going to get started in just a moment. My name is Michelle Price. I'm the Executive Director of the Coalition for National Trauma Research, and I'll be walking you through the introduction to the National Trauma Research Repository and the work of the Common Data Elements Steering Committee that you all have agreed to serve on, which we very much appreciate. I am not able to see, looks like we've got some folks waiting. Captain Polk, are you on? Yes.
Hey,
JB, are you on? Sorry.
John Cole.
Good day, everybody.
Sorry.
Well, you can hear me.
Why don't we go ahead and start with introductions while we're waiting for Captain Polk and JB Phillips to join. I'll just work down my list and call folks out. If you could please just introduce yourself, tell us which institution you're with, and if you're representing an institution on this committee, if you could tell us that as well. We'll start with Ashley Moreno.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ashley Moreno. I am a research associate working with the Coalition for National Trauma Research, and I will be helping y'all with whatever Michelle and Lizette and Pam need.
Thank you. Avery Nathans.
Hi there, Avery Nathans. I'm Medical Director of Trauma Quality Programs at the American College of Surgeons. I'm presenting that organization. I also oversee the data that we hold at the college related to trauma care.
Great, thank you very much. Deborah Babcock.
Hi, everyone. I'm Deborah Babcock. I'm from the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke. I work with the Fitbird team occasionally, and I'm a program director at NINDS, and I'm happy to work on this project.
Thank you. Carl Schulman.
Yeah, sorry, Carl Schulman. I'm on representing the American Burn Association. I'm on their Burn Science Advisory Panel and their quality committee that does the registry work.
Thank you. John Cole.
Yes, I'm John Cole. I am currently the chair of the East Multi-Center Trial Committee, and I'll be representing East.
Thank you. Kevin Armengol.
Hi, my name is Kevin Armengol. I'm with the FITBUR operations team. I'm actually subbing in today for Olga Vach, who's also on FITBUR operations. She's our data curator, and she'll be working with you all to advise and get these CDEs into the FITBUR system.
Thank you. Lizette Villarreal.
Hi, everyone. Lizette Villarreal. I'm Program Manager over at the Coalition for National Trauma Research, and I'll be helping the rest of the team here with the project.
Thank you. Mary Homer.
Hi, I'm Mary Homer. I am the Branch Chief of Radiological Nuclear Countermeasures at the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, which is housed within the Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response. We are a funding agency, and I'm here because the trauma injury and the MCMs, that the medical countermeasures that you would use to treat them, fall within my portfolio.
Thank you. Monica Phillips.
Hello, my name is Monica Phillips. I work as a senior program manager for Center, and I will be facilitating work related to this project.
Thank you. Nee Coffey Mold-Millman.
Yeah, hi, I'm Nico Fee. I'm an emergency medicine physician and faculty at the University of Colorado. I'm also the principal investigator for an international trauma network with a focus on prolonged casualty care.
Thank you. Nathan White.
Hi, everybody. I'm Nathan White. Associate Professor and Vice Chair for Research for the Department of Emergency Medicine at the University of Washington in Seattle.
Thank you. Nicholas Medrano.
Hey everybody, Nick Medrano. I'll be the data analyst here at Center, the primary data analyst here working on the NTRR project.
Thank you. Pam Bixby.
Hi, I'm Pam Bixby, and I am the project manager for the overall NTRR to FITBUR project, and I'll be your primary point of contact often on this project.
Thank you. Kevin Schuster.
Hi, Kevin Schuster. I'm a trauma surgeon at Yale, and I am the vice chair of the multi-institutional trials for the AAST, and that's who I'm representing.
Thank you. Deborah Stein.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Deb Stein. I am a trauma surgeon and surgical intensivist at the University of Maryland, and I am serving in a capacity as a member of the Executive Steering Committee representing Center.
Thank you. Charlie Wade.
Yes, I'm Charlie Wade. I'm the director of the Center for Translational Injury Research at the University of Texas at Houston, and I'm a guest.
Okay, thank you. Hello, JB. I see you've joined us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, good afternoon and good morning, everyone. I'm trying to get my camera to work. I'm JB Phillips. I'm the Combat Casualty Care Program, the sponsor of this effort. I look forward to working with you. And also, Director Captain Polk is in flight now, and if he lands in time, he'll be able to join, but possibly not. But I'm here to speak on behalf of Combat Casualty Care.
Thanks, JB. Nsini Umu.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nsini Umo. I am the TBI Program Director at NINDS with NIH, and I'm happy to be here.
Great, thank you very much. Next slide, please. So our agenda for today is we are going to give you a brief history of the National Trauma Research Repository. We call it NTRR for short, the acronym. And we're going to explain the current work, which is converting the repository from its current state and aligning it directly with the FITBUR information system, so Federal Interagency TBI repository. We will discuss the charge of this committee and what we envision as the processes for meeting all the project goals, and we'll go through those. We'll also present to you the first bit of work that this committee will be doing, which is looking at a crosswalk between the core data elements that were developed for the first version of the NTRR and comparing them to FITBUR's core CDEs, and then making some decisions about which versions do you want to see in the new NTRR that will be coming back online. We'll also talk with you about establishing work groups that are domain specific, and these work groups will extend the work of this committee by focusing on the adoption of basic CDEs that are germane to those particular domains. So the domains will present to you what we recommend, and we'll ask for your feedback so that we can finalize those working groups and get those groups started. And then finally, we'll talk to you about the in-person meeting of this committee, where a lot of the detailed work will happen on just making decisions about the core CDEs and the basic CDEs. And that will be in San Antonio in February. Next slide, please. So as you've heard, we have assembled a really fantastic group of subject matter experts and stakeholders in the trauma and related research worlds, if you will. This is the list of the CDE committee members as of today, and there are still a few spots that we are trying to fill, so this is subject to change. Next slide. And I should say before I go any further, JB, feel free to interject at any point. JB is our contracting officer representative on this contract that the Coalition for National Trauma Research has with the Department of Defense. So JB, please feel free to interject at any point. And if anyone has questions, if you'll just feel free to speak up and we can answer them at that moment, or we should have time for questions at the end. So, excuse me, next slide, please. So the National Trauma Research Repository actually stretches all the way back to December of 2012. We received funding from the DoD in 2015 to create the National Trauma Research Repository along with some other studies. And we issued a call for proposals. We had a steering committee at that time and working groups that helped us review the proposals, make decisions about common data elements in the first version of the NTRR. The site itself went live back in 2018. We selected Sapient Governmental as our vendor to build the system. They also built FITBR, and they work hand in hand with Matt McAuliffe and the Center for Information Technology at NIH. And so the site was, the repository was operational, and we worked on importing legacy studies. So legacy studies are studies that were completed, and there was value in sharing these large studies with the trauma community. And we did that work through March of 2021. At that time, we had a break in funding. The original funding had been stretched out to last through 2021. And then it took us a while to figure out how to fund the next iteration of the repository. I'm happy to say that we received community funding support, congressional funding through the DoD, and executed an agreement with the DoD in May of this year, 2-year project to begin with, to integrate the NTRR into FITBR at the NIH. Next slide. So now I'll give you an overview of what the project is. So this is the service agreement between the Coalition for National Trauma Research and the DoD. And the high-level tasks of this are to use a consensus-driven approach to decide what the common data elements should be in this next version of the repository. Deciding on like the ones that we had before, looking at what's in FITBR, where's the alignment, where do we differ, and what do we want to do. This is where we need your expertise. We will also be cleaning and harmonizing study data with established and new common data elements, and preparing to import study data into the new NTRR, or version 2, if you will. We'll also be establishing the processes for submitting data to the repository, for requesting data, all the policies and procedures that go along with that, which we have. We just need to review them and check for potential better alignment with FITBR, since they're going to be sort of sister systems moving forward. And then, of course, establishing the process for using data from the NTRR, requesting it, sharing it, things like that. Next slide. So this is the organizational structure of this project. The project is, as I said, it's an award to the Coalition for National Trauma Research. And you see the center project staff over here to the in the red will be the team that will be the engine for making all of this happen. We are going to be led by an executive steering committee. Most of those folks are on the call today. These the executive committee members represent CCCRP, NIH, and specifically the Center for Information Technology, NINS, and NHLBI, and then 2 representatives from Center. Then we have the CDE Steering Committee, which you all have graciously agreed to serve on. And then we will have these working groups that I talked about a little earlier. And these are what we think might be the working groups, but this is to be determined today by you all toward the end of this call. Next slide. So the overall scope of work of this project, we'll just lay this out for you, and then we'll drill down into specifically what we're asking you all to help us with as the CDE Steering Committee. So first of all, we established leadership in the executive committee, which I was just describing. We established this committee, and then we will hold 1 in-person meeting of this committee. This committee will also have quarterly Zoom meetings. And then we're going to establish the working groups to develop and validate the basic CDEs. We're going to prepare to integrate the legacy studies into FITBR IS information system. We will develop a comprehensive plan to support the use of the legacy data, including deciding which studies are still valuable and worth going through that process of loading the data into the repository. And of course, as I said, we'll be developing policies and procedures and sharing findings with the trauma community. Next slide. So this is a little bit much for a PowerPoint presentation. This is our overall Gantt chart. And you'll see that on a little ways down, there's a line for quarterly CDE meetings. But if you go to the next slide, please, this is specific to the CDE committee, which shows that basically we will be first working on establishing the working groups, getting them running, giving you all information on a website so that you, when you have a moment, can go in and look at the detailed analysis of the core data elements as they exist now in FITBR and in NTRR, and then generating the trauma-specific basic CDEs or the domain-specific basic CDEs, having you all review those, taking all that work to the executive committee for their final blessing. And we project that this work will happen over the next roughly 18 months. Next slide. So now I'd like to turn the presentation over to Nick Medrano. He is going to get into more of the details of what we're saying here, explain some of the terminology, make sure everyone understands what we're doing, what our plan is, and he will also be walking us through the website that's available right now to review the CDEs. We may have a technical issue there since Pam was not able to share. Pam, in the background, would you please make sure that Lizette has that link and she's ready to share?
Yes, she has the link.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Nick, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Michelle. So before we go any farther, I just want to make sure that we get a few definitions out there for everyone so we can get on the same page when we're talking about core versus basic. So when we mention core common data elements, CDEs, those are going to be data elements that are going to be collected in all studies that are submitted to this second iteration of the NTRR. So we'll talk a little bit about the different cores. We're going to be pulling together NTRR version 1's core as well as FITBR's core, and kind of starting from there and then deciding what we want to include as our core. But when we use the term core, we're talking about elements that will be collected for all studies that are submitted to the repository. Next slide. And then we also have the term basic. Sorry, we have basic, we have core CDEs, and we have basic CDEs. These basic CDEs will be those that are domain specific. So Michelle has mentioned developing working groups. These working groups will then be developing what these basic CDEs are based off of which domains we determine will be created. Next slide. So some of the work that we've been doing so far, and I will be jumping onto the site to show you these kind of 3 major topics here as well. I just want to start with a brief overview of each one of these. The first thing that we've been working on is combining what the FITBR core CDEs as well as the NTRR version 1 core CDEs. So we thought that would be a great kind of point to start. Make sure that we remove any duplicates and then provide those to you all to then filter down which one of these do we want to include in the next iteration. The second component deals with mapping very specific version 1 NTRR core CDEs. So there are some CDEs that are from NTRR version 1 that don't have a match necessarily with the core that exists in FITBR, but FITBR somewhere inside of FITBR, there may be a basic CDE or just plain CDE that matches very closely with what existed in NTRR v1. So we've done an analysis to determine which of these data elements would we consider comparable to each other, and then determining which one of those we want to use. And then finally, when it comes to information that's collected about these CDEs, we have different data element attributes. So when it comes to the data capture structure of these CDEs, we have things like what's the variable name, what's the title, what's the definition, what data type is it, what permissible values are there. Well, when we look at these 2 different data dictionaries, they're structured differently. So we need to determine which structure we want to use for version 2. So that's kind of the work that we're going to be doing regarding the core CDEs. Next slide, please, and if we could go to the website. So all of those 3 topics we do have now available for you to view on this website. If we could open it up just so I can give a brief overview of how it's structured.
Can you give me 1 second? I'm going to transfer over there.
For sure.
Hey, this is JB. While we're waiting, you can go to the current FITBR website and see, before even having an account, log in and you can see data and how it's organized per project, who the funding agency is, and some outcomes, publications that were associated with each of these, the data gathering and the data input. But that's only for TBI right now, but he'll walk you through the other things. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, JB. So now what we've included on the main FITBR page, if you hit the drop down for data, we have the potential to now look at what we're working on here, specifically for NTRR. So when you get to this landing page, we have a few tabs here. The first one being just general information about this project. At the bottom of this tab, under the About This Project, we have a click here. So that will give you the ability to download all the tables I'm about to show you. So we have the tables for display here on the site, but also if you prefer just downloading the Excel sheets, there are some instructions on them as well. To look through them in that way, you can. So that's available for you. If Lizette, could you click on the core CDEs, that first tab? So this is just that list of core CDEs that's been now compiled from NTRR version 1, as well as core from FITBR, as well as what they call the TBI core from FITBR. So those have been combined here on this tab. And this is the set that we're starting with. We have 55 core CDEs available here for you. To give you some type of reference, NTRR v1 had 22 that were used, and then FITBR's general core also has 22. So we're starting with a larger set, but ideally we're going to be working through this set and determining which ones we would like to keep and what we think should be reported in every trauma study that's going to be submitted to the NTRR. So that's the first tab. If we can go to the second tab, This is that mapping. So we have certain data elements that exist within NTRR version 1. So those being starting on the left-hand side. So for example, the very first variable name is age years. So we don't have FitBIRD in their core doesn't report that as something that they report in every single study, but they do have a CDE in their data dictionary. So in this case, the variable name is something slightly different, and then the definition is something slightly different. So we need to work through these different CDEs and determine, do these closely align enough? Are these comparable that we would like to stick with what FitBIRD has, or are these going to be potentially different data elements? So that's kind of the second step process. And then finally, we have an attribute comparison. So that next tab, attribute comparison. This has to do with how is the data when we're looking at these CDEs, what type of information are we collecting on them? So in which case we had variable name, like I said, title, definition. We have some of these attributes that are collected from both of the data dictionaries. So those are available starting in the first column. Then we have some that were very specific to FitBIRD. And then this table, you can actually scroll over to the right and then see NTRR specific attributes as well. So once again, all of this data is available here on the site as well as if you go back to the first tab, you can download each one of these individually. I think it's all zipped up there for you, and you can look at it in the Excel format, which may be a little bit, whichever you prefer. Finally, if you will, we can go to the feedback tab. And then this is how we're going to be allowing kind of public comment. If you could click on the link there, Lizette, and then Michelle can explain kind of how we are collecting this type of feedback.
Sure. Before I do that, does anyone have any questions for Nick? Okay.
Michelle, there's a question in the chat box.
Oh, thank you. Let me take a look at that. For those of us who do not yet have an account, what type of account should we request? JB, do they need to request an account to view this information? Or Matt,
No.
if you're on?
You can see, if you look at the link that Nick had up, there's no login to see what he's seen, right, Nick? Anybody can see that. Is that?
Yeah, that's correct. You don't need a login to get to that data. So if you just go to the main FitBIRD and go to the data dropdown, there's a trauma core CDEs.
And we'll send out a link, of course, and all the information that you need. Dr. Nathans, I see you're raising your hand.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Nick, for the overview. So this question might not be the right time for this question, but there might be some fields that have been so well populated in the old NTRR that we need to keep them for the legacy data. And it may not be worth, changing the field definition just because, again, there's so many key studies in the NTRR, and it doesn't make sense to change it as we emerge with FitBIRD. Can you provide some guidance on how we should figure out priorities if that does come up? And actually, what's in the NTR? How many studies? Like some direction there, because I think we will end up having to make some decisions at some point about whether we keep a field or abandon a field or move to the FitBIRD definition or something.
Monica, I think you might be able to provide some insight on the data that has been put into NTRR and how that might help Dr. Nathan help us make determinations on this.
Sure. As far as the NTRR version 1, there are two studies in there as far as data. However, I had created other data elements. So there's actually more data elements than there is data. There are data elements that were created that didn't have data put against them because that project sort of ended. And while I had it, I didn't have time to get it in before it shut down. So it may come up, but I don't think it isn't going to be that significant on that end. What will be significant is reviewing all the potential legacy data, all the legacy studies that we find might be extremely beneficial to put into this new version and evaluating those studies and those data elements because they may not relate to anything common. And we'll have to make decisions about whether we're going to import them or not and how valuable they're going to be.
Okay, that's helpful direction. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions at this time? So I'll just say before talking about the public posting that we understand that this is a lot of information that Nick is presenting today and that is on this website, and it's really not amenable to getting into the details of it in a meeting forum like this. We completely recognize that. That is why we are making this information available to all of you, as well as other trauma researchers and stakeholders for public comment. It will be at the in-person meeting in February where we will ask you to help us make decisions about, which one are we going with? All of those detailed things will happen in the room. But between now and February, we're hopeful that all of you can spend some time familiarizing yourself with the data, and also that you can help us publicize that this is happening, that we would like public comment about the data elements. And so that's why we've created these pages with FITBUR and Sapient, so that these things can be publicly reviewed between now and the end of January 2024. And we've created this comment form, which you may not want to use, but your colleagues might be interested in voicing their opinions about, what's important about choosing this CDE versus this one, whether it should be core or it shouldn't be required. And that's what this form is for. And we will compile all of the feedback. We really don't know how much feedback we'll get, but we will compile it all and you'll have it to review at the meeting in February. So Lizette, if you could switch back to the slides, please. So what we're doing is, one of our tasks is to socialize, the relaunching of the NTRR, as well as to get input from trauma stakeholders about which data elements we use. And if you'll go to the next slide, please, Lizette. We've created a postcard that we will be passing out at professional organizations, starting with, we'll be at the AAST meeting next week in Anaheim. If you're there, we'll be exhibiting. Please come by and say hello. And we will also send you an electronic version of this postcard for you to send, if you will, for those of you who represent organizations. If you'll please circulate this within the appropriate committees and stakeholder groups in your organization, so that they're aware that this opportunity is out there. If they want to go and learn more about what we're putting together, the CDEs, how they're being compared, and give us their feedback. We will be doing this, as I said, we're starting at AAST, we're going to East, we're going to be circulating it through all of our member organizations. And to the extent that you're able to help us, we would really appreciate your assistance. Okay, now we're going to pivot and talk about the CDE committee work groups. So again, these are work groups that will be domain specific focus areas that will develop, the recommended basic, not required, but basic elements for that domain. So if you'll go to the next slide, these are the domains that were either in the first version of the NTRR, or they're in FITBUR currently, or there are some other areas that Captain Polks and the executive committee thought we should consider. So as you see there's epidemiology, and the rest of these are basically kind of domain of care specific. So pre-hospital, acute hospital, post-acute hospital, rehabilitation, long-term outcomes. There may be others. There's also, do we want to develop the consideration of, do we maybe want to have like special populations, like maybe rural trauma research, or would that fit under pre-hospital? And so what I'd like to do is open this up for comment. I don't know if Matt McAuliffe has joined us yet. Matt, are you on? Dr. Polk, have you been able to join?
I don't see Travis is on here yet.
I'm here.
So JB, you've been involved with FITBR, and were you involved in their discussion about their domains?
Yes, some degree, and Dr. Umo Insini knows a lot about FIPR too. The DoD is the main sponsor of FIPR at NIH. We fund the operation and maintenance of it. But Insini is at National Institute of Neurological Disease and Stroke. Insini, can you talk about any of the domains that we have in there? I can tell you some about some of these domains that come up in the NASM consensus study. Insini,
sorry, I'm having very bad internet connection, so it's going in and out. So if I lose you, please forgive me. I'll rejoin. So I was not involved in the very beginning when these domains were these categories were set up. However, I can tell you that for the NINDS TBI CDEs, we are in the process of revamping these categories. So there will likely be different domains. And I would imagine that FIPR would probably follow suit with the domains that we are going to be setting up for NINDS. So I can say that this is kind of in motion at this point. Michelle, I think you're on mute if you were saying something.
Thank you. Do you know if there's a timeline for the revamping?
Yeah, that's supposed to start in November. And it'll be probably most of FY24 that'll be going on and before it's finalized. Yeah.
And also one thing which was brought up in the NASM, and I know there's been a trauma NASM study that was done maybe 2018, the near preventable death.
16.
Yes, 16. Well, NASM did a study for us, and part of, and for traumatic brain injury, which is in itself its own type of trauma. But rural communities were and underserved populations were a big concern. And one reason rurality is different than the standard pre-hospital evacuation to definitive care. In a study in Arizona for all the EM systems and 22,000 subjects, average of transport is 33 minutes to the emergency department. Now, rural communities, they've had to refuel helicopters, and that came up in the NASM study. So that's why I thought rurality may be an issue with trauma, but I'm not sure given what the committee is seeing. Over.
Yeah, and just to also add on to that, so Michelle, we do have like a draft of what these new domains would likely be. So what I can do is I can send you that draft, and then maybe you and the group can kind of discuss and review from there.
That would be great. And knowing that this process on your end is going to play out over the course of the next year, it sounds like we can certainly be fluid. We can always create an additional work group, as necessary. So there's a good deal of flexibility that we can use. Mm-hmm. Would it be reasonable to circulate that draft to this committee via email?
Yeah, just, realizing that these are not the final domains. But yeah, that should be fine. So what I'll do is I'll send it to you and then you can disseminate it to everyone.
Okay. Why don't we open it up for comments and questions? What do folks think about these? Is there something major that you think we should add to it? Like, I'll say, for example, like blood products domain, others?
It's a balance between going too broad and too narrow. Like blood products should be part of acute hospital, maybe a little bit of pre-hospital.
That's reasonable. Dr. Schulman, any thoughts about how we align with what you're doing in the burns community? Should we have a domain specific for burns and largely adopt the great work that y'all have done? Have you given that some thought?
Yeah, I've given that a lot of thought. I don't think it's a separate domain. I think it might have some unique issues in most of the domains, pre-hospital, acute hospital, post-acute. There are some burn-specific things, but I don't want it to, it permeates everything. And we'll try and align as much as possible, but there may be some small issues in each of the domains related to burns. I agree with the concept. I think these domain-specific work groups shouldn't get too into the weeds, and this is a reasonable start, and it follows the patient's journey. I think I definitely turn that to long-term outcomes as opposed to just outcomes. But as you mentioned, and I think rurality belongs in pre-hospital, but I think the domain should remain relatively broad, and then the work groups can determine if there's something that needs to be broken out.
I see Mary Homer commented she thought that blood products would be a subtopic under each domain. And then there's also the question from John Cole about, are the domains too broad? What do folks think?
My concern with the, this is John Cole, just for example, like the acute hospital, there's having a splenic injury versus an orthopedic injury versus a TBI, in order to have basic elements for those three problems, those are, it could be just so broad, it's not really beneficial. And then the concern is, like, should we be more specific and have, major things we want to change and like say, this is what we're going to do for, splenic injuries or transfusion projects, and then build it incrementally over many years to get the things that most,
I just want to mention that I think, the goal of this project is not to be everything for every study, but to create the true universal set of data points we want to collect for all studies. And I think there will always be, obviously, way more data collected in a study than ends up in this repository. I don't think we're suggesting that every data point from every study is going to be included in this repository. And so some of the very, I think, injury-specific things might not make it into the repository, but they'd be available, in a different repository that the investigator has. Because we cannot possibly encompass all of the various things for all of the various organ injuries, I don't think. And that goes for burns too.
Dr. Stein?
Yeah, I just want to encourage us as much as possible. Let me try to lower my hand. Sorry. Is to think broadly, and I think Dr. Schulman, I think you're right. I don't think this is going to be all things to all trauma research. However, as much as possible, the commonality that we can create here that will allow us to combine studies going forward in the future and encouraging the use of the CDEs is going to be so important to how we coalesce our research in the future. So I think, to your point, we're never going to be, it's not going to be mandatory for anybody who's doing trauma research to have the data elements to precisely map to these. But the more we can encourage it, standardize it, and promote it and promulgate it across our various societies, the better we'll be in the back end to be able to use these data to answer additional questions. So I want to shoot, we should aim for the stars. We might miss a little bit, but I think we should at least aim high here. Just my thoughts.
Monica, you have your hand up?
Yes, ma'am. I would agree with Dr. Stein, and I think all study data will go into the repository. Using the core data elements is separate than the basic common data elements, and you will have, so your study would include the core common data elements, and then it depending on what environment, it might be several environments. You might have a study that uses the core, uses some uses the basic data elements, common data elements for pre-hospital because the patient hits there, and then may follow through to acute hospitalization. I think there are data elements that do transcend all studies where the patient is in the hospital, such as length of stay. There are some core elements within that environment that are meaningful and can be harmonized across splenic, orthopedic, and TBI, wouldn't matter. And so I just want to make sure that we're all sort of having that understanding. Specific elements related to splenic, orthopedic, or trauma as those, that's yet another element to this, but they would be included in the repository. And remember, within a study, there will be common data elements and there will be unique data elements. All of those will be uploaded, and over time, there might be unique data elements that we are able to make common. And that's what happened basically with TBI and FIPR over time.
Dr. Schuster?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, I think this whole discussion that we're having right now surrounds that common question of what's the extent of the variables that we're going to talk about, and how do we decide this is too in the weeds, this is too broad, and we actually need to be more in the weeds in terms of these things? Or do we just collect a list of injuries, or to Dr. Cole's point, do we go down to the grade of the injury? Do we apply all the livers get a grade and all the spleens get a grade? So how do we decide how specific we want to be?
Right, and we haven't, we're kind of chunking this work, starting with the core and then going to basic. And then as Monica mentioned, there will be hundreds probably of unique data elements. And that's one of the things that we will curate moving forward, is the creation of the unique data elements so that all of your study data can go into this. That is the vision, is that it's just, that's the one place that you can put all your study elements. And one of the things going forward will be that consideration of, well, we have this one. Are you sure you can't use this? Do we really need to create another unique data element? And that'll be the thing, one of the things that we will curate and manage moving forward for the repository once we do this foundational work.
Okay with that? Okay, I'll let you know when.
Well, here's what I'll propose is that we will we'll get the information from Dr. Umo about NINS remapping and the domains they're looking at. We'll send that out to all of you, and we'll communicate via email and see if we can come to some consensus about the working groups that we want to start with the recognition that some may need to split off. We may need different ones. And we'll just be flexible about that as we recognize the needs. Does that sound reasonable? Okay, hearing no objections. We'll go to the next slide, please, which is just a little bit more about these working groups, not the domains, but just the groups in general. We ideally would like the groups to be, of course, multidisciplinary, just like this steering committee is, and to be comprised of both subject matter experts, investigators in the particular domains, investigators who have an interest, of course, in these kinds of things, like understand the value of developing and harmonizing data elements, if there are folks that, who have experience with other repositories who would like to serve on these work groups, that would be fantastic. And what we'll be asking the working group members to do is to look at the basic CDEs for each domain. We will develop the set of what we see, either from our previous work in the NTRR or FITBR or other large data sets, which we've already been through about 60 of major studies and compile this kind of information. And there'll be a center staff member that's assigned to each of these groups who will curate all that information and organize Zoom meetings we are thinking maybe once a month for 4 to 6 months to complete that work. And then the recommendations of that work group will come back to you all to review and, say whether or not you think that the recommendations make sense, if you want to make any changes. And then ultimately that will be reported up to the executive committee for the final decision about these basic CDEs. And so what we would like your help with, if you'll go on to the next slide, is first of all, let us know once we decide on the domains, we will email you and say, okay, here are the domains. Please let us know if you would like to serve on any of these work groups, and if there are others who you recommend, please send us their name and email addresses, and then we'll reach out to them. So what we were thinking was that we would have the domains finalized and ask you all to send us recommendations for working group members by October 2nd. And then we would send out invitations the following week, and hopefully we would have the work groups more or less formed by November 1st so that they have a chance to meet once or twice before this group convenes in San Antonio in February. We recognize that they won't finish their work before this group meets, because we think it will take 4 to 6 months. That's what we estimated. But we'll at least be able to report to you in February where they're at. Any questions about that? Okay. I see we have about 9 minutes left, so this is our last slide. This is about the in-person meeting, which we hope you all will be able to attend in person, but if you cannot, we of course understand that, and there will be Zoom capabilities. It will be held here in beautiful San Antonio in February, so the weather should be nice, on February 6th and 7th. So please go ahead and hold those days on your calendar. We will meet all day on the 6th and roughly half a day on the 7th. Our thinking is that most folks will fly in February 5th, and that most folks will be able to fly out the afternoon of February 7th. We will give you the specific times and the hotel information as soon as we lock it in. We're very close to doing that. Of course, all of the travel arrangements and costs will be handled by us and covered by the award from the DoD. There will also be a daily honoraria for those attending the meeting, either in person or via Zoom. And I should mention, while we're talking about honoraria, there will be an honoraria for everyone who participates in this committee in the Zoom meetings. We will be reaching out to you about that. And I know there are some of you who have already said, I can't receive an honoraria because I already work for the feds. And so we'll contact each of you directly about those arrangements. And that starts with the meeting that we're having today. So be on the lookout for messages from us about that as well. And then, of course, the last bullet here is we will circulate the agenda for the in-person meeting, in advance of the meeting. And then, of course, as I said, all of the CDE work that we've been describing, all the considerations in tackling the core CDEs is available now on the website, and we will be sending you that link as well as the postcard to circulate with your individual organizations seeking public comment about the CDEs, the core CDEs. And with that, I will stop and we'll be happy to entertain additional questions or comments from the group. Dr. Babcock.
Yeah, I'm sorry to be a pain, but I've already got a conflict with this meeting. I'm already committed to present at another meeting on those dates. Are they set in stone already?
Well, they seem to be the dates that worked the best for the majority of folks.
Okay.
So I'm afraid they're not completely set, but I think it would be very, very hard to change them, just given all the different activities that are going on, unfortunately. But we can arrange to get your feedback ahead of time. And if there's any part of it that you can attend via Zoom, that would be great.
Okay, yeah, we'll work it out. I can maybe even send my feedback with Encini.
Oh, sure. And also, we are available to meet with anyone at any time. If you have thoughts and you don't want to do the web form, or you've got questions, or you'd like Nick to walk through some of the data with you, we are available to do that. Just reach out to us and let us know.
Okay, thanks very much.
Dr. Homer is asking if we're going to send the slides, and yes, we are. We will be sending out the slides with the follow-up communication that we talked about. And this is recorded, and it will be available on our website. We will probably set up an internal page for the committee members for just committee level communication, and we'll probably put it there. But we will send the link out to you all too. Any other questions? Anything else in the chat? All right, well then, thank you all again for agreeing to serve on this committee. There's a group of us at Center that will be helping do all the legwork for these activities that we've described, so that we can just use your time to elicit your expertise and make it as easy as possible for you all to understand when what the decision is, and with doing the least amount of homework ahead of time. So that is our goal. We very much appreciate all of your time and your agreeing to serve on this committee. And with that, I think we are done. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, Michelle.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.